Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brever and alongside me is Logan Camden. And for those of you who had the over on a Carson haircut, congratulations. Your bet has cashed. We're going to be talking about Game 3 of the NBA Finals today. The Boston Celtics have taken a 3-0 lead on the Dallas Mavericks. And breaking news, Logan, nobody has ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in NBA playoff history. Not in the finals, not in any other round. So I think it's pretty safe to say this is not going to be the instance in which that happens and that this baby is all but over. What's your biggest takeaway from Boston winning this game and now sitting very much on the brink of an NBA title?
Yeah, I mean, one of my big takeaways for Boston is I just want to give a bunch of credit to their bench in what they did in today's game in the absence of Kristaps Porzingis. You know, this is an exceptionally talented basketball team with Kristaps Porzingis or without, the caliber of talent that they have. It's unreal, but just replacing his value is a super hard thing to do. In this series, he was giving you 16, 5, and 1 on 71% true shooting with 2.5 blocks per game and all the things that Kristaps Porzingis provides: mismatch attacking, elite post scoring, the ability to shoot over basically anyone on the court, the floor spacing. But the biggest thing to me is, what he did on the interior, taking away shots in and around the rim, anchoring the glass, and just being a general deterrent. I thought this was the game that Dallas just had to capitalize on. If you're going to get one, you got to win these two at home. You got to even it up. You got to take advantage on one, being at home, and then two, one of their best players being injured. And I thought Dallas was going to capitalize on that. But a big reason why they weren't able to was the play of the guys that stepped up. I want to give a big shout out to Al Horford and what he did defensively in space, the effort, the constant energy. Xavier Tillman, I thought, would be a massive liability. He defended so well in space tonight against Luka. He blocks, I think, 2 Luka shots, or he really affects 2 of them. I thought he would be a real weak point that Dallas could just go at and attack on the perimeter. That's not the case. I thought now that we're going to get more Sam Hauser minutes, okay, he's a guy that we're going to be able to go at and attack. No, I was wrong. Hauser held up really well defensively against Kyrie and Luka both. And then Peyton Pritchard too, dude. He's got that one matchup versus Luka, where Luka takes him baseline, tries to jump into a foul, and Pritchard just walls him up. I was just so impressed with the collective effort. You have elite performances from Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. We'll get into those, but this was a huge game for Boston's bench to prove themselves. And not only did they prove themselves defensively, you get an Xavier Tillman corner 3. You get Sam Hauser flicking 3 massive threes. I just want to give a huge shout out to all the bench for stepping up in his absence. That was where we were going to need more production, and you certainly got it, especially out of those 4 guys. Just a huge shout out to those guys for picking up the slack in Porzingis' absence.
Absolutely. The bench mob came through for Boston, and that has been the biggest question about this team in a lot of ways, end to end. And they have answered the call and have absolutely proven themselves as a valuable second unit. And Sam Hauser, Logan, has proven you wrong, my friend. I told you the big Sam Hauser game was incoming. He's damn near had 2 of them in these finals. He has balled out on the big stage. Tillman absolutely was sensational in his minutes defensively. And this is really, really rough for Dallas because, of course, you aren't coming back at this point, but you've now had 2 games that you look at and you think, okay, that's the sort of game that we have to get. Game 2, because Boston was so ice cold shooting and Jayson Tatum was so off, and you didn't get that one. And then this one, as you mentioned, you come out on your home floor, you have all of the urgency, you have all of the energy, and you channel that early in this game. You come out and you smack Boston in the mouth, and again, they start out cold shooting. And from the jump early in this game, Kyrie and Luka are both playing at a very, very high level offensively. They combined for 37 points in the first half, and you still can't get it done without Kristaps Porzingis on the floor. That just speaks to the massive, massive talent gap between these 2 teams. That's honestly one of the biggest that we've seen in the finals in a long time. And Boston's shot quality has just been pretty much unfailingly sensational throughout this series. Now, the exception was in this fourth quarter because they started to devolve into a lot of tougher isolations. You have the back-to-back Peyton Pritchard long twos. Then you have a tough Tatum turnaround. You have Tatum getting stripped. And even down the stretch, they were able to churn out enough offense but I didn't love their shot quality. Jaylen Brown serves you a big bucket, but he and Jayson were taking some tougher shots than what they had been generating through the first 3 quarters and what they've been generating for most of this series. But overall, overwhelmingly, they're just creating amazing drive and kick looks. They are constantly finding mismatches because they have such versatile personnel offensively. They have so many big, athletic, skilled shot makers and ball handlers, and they are just attacking those weak points on the Dallas defense. And Luka Doncic is by far the biggest one, and he had an abysmal defensive performance that we have to talk about. But the level of ease has just been completely different from Boston compared to Dallas. And that is a question of just having such superior personnel, having 5 awesome shooters on the floor at basically all times, having 4 really good creators on the floor with your starting 5, even without KP, who, by the way, even in the first 2 games, as awesome as he was only playing 20 minutes a night, and they still went up 2-0. The backcourt, Derek White and Drew Holiday, have combined in this series for 32, 12, and 8 on 66% true shooting. That's just what they're doing offensively. And we know that they're all world defensively. And on the other side of the ball, those guys are a massive part of it, but there's just nothing easy for Dallas. There are no weak points on this defense. I thought coming into this series, Al Horford would be the guy who you try to attack in space. This was his weakest defensive game, but that's just because he was amazing in games 1 and 2. He was still very solid in this game. And now 33 times he's been targeted out of pick and roll and isolation in this series. He's allowed 22 total points. That's 0.66 points per possession. That is outstanding defense against 2 of the best guards, 2 of the best offensive players on the planet. And the formula for Dallas is just too tough. Every possession, Kyrie and Luka are having to work for a pretty tough bucket against, at the very least, a pretty good defender in single coverage. They're not going to send 2 defenders your way. You're not going to create any of those corner threes, any of those lobs, and you need to create an incredibly high shot quality for your supporting cast to produce offensively, because these other guys just aren't skilled enough otherwise. And they're just testing. If you 2 guys can self-create 75 points, basically, night after night, is what you have to do. Can you eat up that volume? Can you maintain that efficiency? Can you survive offensively when your role players are this X'd out? And the reality is just that against a team as good as Boston, that is as airtight defensively as they are, that is able to switch everything and negate all those advantages, and then has all this offensive personnel, like, that's pretty much an impossible formula. And I want to give a bunch of props to Boston because they believed in their system on both sides of the ball. They never strayed from their identity. They never overcommitted to the stars defensively. They never became hesitant about taking good catch and shoot threes offensively. Not surprising there, but overall, like, it paid off. And even though they were cold in game 2, it's big for them in this game. And with that sort of talent, like, Dallas just can't overcome that. So now with Boston, big picture, we're looking at a team that was top 5 in net rating this year, top 5 in point differential. They're now 79-21 through 100 games of basketball. If they finish this off in game 4 and they go 16-3 in these playoffs, that will put them with just the 2017 Warriors and the 2000 Lakers this century, or excuse me, the 2001 Lakers this century in terms of teams to lose 3 games or fewer in a title run, like, just completely dominant. They will be stamped as one of the best champs this century. They will be stamped as one of statistically the best teams ever. And as we know, one of the most talented teams ever, bar none, because they had top 50 players. They lost one of them. They still won an NBA Finals game. And you felt like they were in control for the vast majority of it. And I think we absolutely, as a basketball collective, have just taken this team's greatness for granted, taken that sort of overwhelming talent, taken the improvements they made in this offseason and the internal improvements of so many of their key players. Like, they just have an insane amount of basketball ability on the floor at all times. And that's why the fact that before this series, I was seeing most people pick Dallas absolutely blew my mind. You could have run 10,000 simulations of this series, Logan. Dallas would not win a single one of them. I truly believe that. I don't think that there is a variable that could have gone significantly enough in their favor. Again, now KP is out, and still it's clear who is the better basketball team. I just think that we were meant to see Boston versus Denver at the end of the day, and Dallas absolutely earned this finals appearance, right? That goes without saying. They beat the team handily that beat Denver, but Denver just matches up better, and they have so much more talent top to bottom on this team. I just think those were the 2 best teams, and because of matchups out west, we didn't get to see it. It would have been nice to see Boston more tested. People for sure will talk about how easy the path was. throughout the East, of course, because of injuries in a weak conference. And in this series, Dallas doesn't have the complete basketball talent of a typical finalist, but Boston was the best team end to end this year. And the dominance they have put forth in the finals against the best team that they faced has really left no questions. And they are absolutely going to be not just a deserved champion, but one of the best that we've seen in recent memory.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I mean, they are one of the best teams in recent memory, and they're going to go down in history regardless of what you think of the path. I do want to hit on that a little more. I want to contextualize. I will go to bat for my Dallas Defenders here heading into this series. You know, the reason that was the case, and I think you're 100% right, Carson. I think we overlooked the talent. I think we underestimated Boston, I myself included. A lot of that definitely had to do with a few things. One, the ease of the path, and two, how much Boston really did struggle with subpar teams, right? They eke out a couple of wins against Indiana where Indiana completely crumbles. You know, they struggle a little bit in their first two rounds too. Not against Miami. They struggle a few games, but yeah.
It's over. They're dominant. They're dominant.
I'm just saying that's important to contextualize of why that was the narrative coming into the series. But yeah, there was a stark talent discrepancy, and we can give a ton of credit to the top two here in Boston. Tatum finally plays a better game offensively. Not elite, not great, not perfect by any means. You know, he goes 4 of 13 from deep. He goes 1 of 5 in the fourth quarter. But he finally pops in this one. He gives you 31, 6, and 5. The guy I want to give a huge shout out to, though, is Jaylen Brown, who is clearly, to me, the front runner for finals MVP. In this game, 38 and 8 on 12 of 22 from the field, 2 of 9 from deep. And there's a lot of moments in transition where Jaylen Brown just blows my mind. I've comped this for a few guys, but he is a bullet train in transition. If you get that man to rock, he is going to make something happen. Late in this game, kicks that one up to Tatum, where Tatum gets the easy jam in transition. In the fourth quarter, has a couple big moments there. But he's the guy that puts Boston, you know, over the top in the fourth quarter. You're right, dude. I hated Boston's offensive process at the end of the game. It was really uncharacteristic, and it was giving me flashbacks to that old Boston team that I thought we might get a few more games of, where Tatum is sinking into that quicksand trap, where he's putting up shots and nothing is falling, where Boston is lulling themselves into isolation possessions. Jaylen Brown dug them out of that. He goes 4 of 7 in the fourth quarter. He hits that big fade and midi over Luka. He drills a right elbow pull-up. You know, and I think people got a little too overly critical of Tatum through the first two games because of how much he struggles from the floor. But you just got to tip your cap to Jaylen Brown, man. Like, call him Robin, you can call him Batman. I don't care what you call him. He's been Boston's most clutch player in these playoffs. I don't think that's debatable whatsoever. No. When the lights are bright, I'm a little scared when Tatum's got the rock. I'm not scared when Jaylen Brown's got the ball. Like, I trust him in these clutch scenarios. And so people are probably, Carson, going to do the credit pie, and we can do that too. Tatum, I think, needs Brown. I think Brown needs Tatum. I think they're a perfect complementary duo when they work together. Tatum may have struggled in the fourth quarter, but he does a lot of great things that I don't want to go unnoticed, man. A lot of hockey assists in this game where he's creating the initial dribble penetration, creating an open look. Like, dude, that third quarter, that's both of them just going to work. 35-19, they outscore Dallas. They come out with a vengeance. They want to close and slam the door on Dallas. Both of these guys played an exceptional basketball game, and they also step up. I give a lot of credit to the bench for stepping up in Porzingis' absence. They needed Tatum to ball like that in the first half and in the third quarter without Kristaps out there, man. They needed Brown to crank it up a notch, and both of those guys answer the call. Brown, to me, is clearly the front runner for Finals MVP. This run has not really changed my mind on who the Celtics' best player is, but you know, I think they need both of these guys, and that's okay, man. We don't have to take anything away from Jayson Tatum. But Brown, to me, is clearly the Finals MVP and is probably going to lock this thing up, man. He's been the most clutch player for them in the finals. He's been the most clutch player for them throughout these playoffs. And in the big moments, he's been that guy, man. And to me, Brown will rightfully earn the Finals MVP if they close this thing out and he plays up the standard.
He was absolutely phenomenal in the second half, 24 points after halftime. And Tatum came out red hot. Like, this had an entirely different feel from him early than the first two games, where we're not talking about his all-around impact, what he's doing defensively and on the glass and as a playmaker. We're just talking about a dude going out there and getting buckets. Some really nice drives, pinpointing the weak points on the Dallas defense. Jaden Hardy came out on the floor immediately. Jayson Tatum forced that switch on back-to-back possessions and got himself a couple of buckets. When THJ was out there, he was driving on him and getting good looks. And then his jumper just started falling. The three ball that had been ice cold suddenly was falling for him. So he comes out, he gives you 20 points in the first half, but it's Jaylen down the stretch. And so often when they have just needed that sort of consistent scoring production, he has been the guy to step up. And we're talking about some difficult isolation shot making in the third quarter where he's hitting these mid-range pull-ups over Maxi Kleber, over PJ Washington, over Luka, guys who have the size to affect those shots. He's been really, really good from that range throughout this postseason. Hit a few big shots there, and that's how he puts this game away over THJ. Was great in transition as per usual, knocked down a couple corner threes, and created a bunch of shots with that drive and kick game. And that to me is where you see so much growth from Jaylen Brown. He is all around a better basketball player than he has ever been. He's the best he's ever been defensively, taking on that Luka matchup, making plays as a low man. He's been really awesome there all year and has been in these finals as well. And the scoring is also the best it's ever been, right? We've never seen this sort of efficiency from Jaylen Brown. He's been so great throughout these playoffs, both getting downhill and as a shot maker. But the playmaking as well, dude, like that sort of all-around polish and impact from him, you didn't see up to this point in his career. Last year against Miami, like this is the dude who was getting clowned on by everybody for his handle, for his lack of playmaking. He has more turnovers than assists in that series as Boston goes out in a really, really disappointing fashion. This series, he's giving you 24, 6, and 6 with 3.5 stocks per game on 63% true shooting. Absolutely should be finals MVP. Tatum has done a lot of amazing stuff defensively on the glass as a playmaker, but it does not outweigh the fact that Jaylen has still been very good in those categories and has just been way, way better as a pure shot maker. And when it comes to Tatum's performance, like obviously it's an improvement in terms of scoring. I was still frustrated with his shot selection down the stretch, and he's now 2 of 12 in fourth quarters of the last 2 games. And I just didn't like that it felt like he started forcing the issue. And that's part of what confused me about what Jayson said after game 2, talking about like, my team's winning. Why do I need to be looking to score or whatever? Like, obviously it sounds great. And he's done a bunch of winning things. Like he has had a big impact through the first 2 games without having to score, but he was still looking to score, right? He took 22 shots. He went 1 of 7 in the fourth quarter. And that's where I do feel like he has that urge at times to like be, okay, this is my moment. I'm going to step up and serve you a tough bucket. But the shot quality wasn't good. And ultimately the shot making wasn't there down the stretch, but it just didn't matter. Boston was just too good. Jaylen was there to step up. You have Drew creating a really big clutch bucket for you. Like, and they created such a margin with their shot quality through the first 3 quarters and with their defensive formula. You didn't need Jayson Tatum to be the hero. And that's just something that stands out. I've seen a lot of people approach this series through the lens of, okay, let's hold Jayson Tatum to the standard of some of these like all-time great players. Let's compare him to Michael Jordan. Let's compare him to his hero, Kobe Bryant, whoever else. And say, well, he doesn't live up to that standard. He doesn't seize the moment of the game. He's not as consistently prolific as a scorer. And that's just not some revelation. Like, that's the reality with Jayson Tatum. He's the all-around superstar. He's the guy who does a lot of good stuff. No, he is not among the absolute best scorers on the planet. He's very good there. There is an inconsistency. There's a volatility. There always has been. But this Boston team was so well constructed with so many options, so many studs on both sides of the ball. He was allowed to do, in many ways, the connective things. He was allowed to just be an advantage creator and then let the aggregate skill around him capitalize off of that. That's what they needed from their best player. They didn't need a dude who could go out there and get 40 every night super efficiently. They didn't need a guy who could do what Luka does offensively as a heliocentric creator. And although I don't think that we should pretend, therefore, that means that Tatum could step into any situation with a less talented basketball team and be every bit as effective as a number one in this spot, it's good enough. And I do want to give him props for doing the winning stuff throughout this series. Because on the flip side, Logan, Luka Doncic, the other superstar in this series, really, really, really disappointing on the defensive end. Obviously, the offensive production is always going to be there. But what did you make of his performance on that side of the ball and what that did to this Dallas defense?
Yeah, I put this loss all on the shoulders of Luka Doncic. Like, you need the offensive production. You always do from Luka, but this was one of the worst defensive performances I've ever seen from him. And it's not like the standard was that high, right? We've seen Luka take games off. Uh, One final thing I want to mention on Boston real quick before we get into this. You mentioned them sticking to their identity too in the shot quality that they consistently generated. They outshoot Dallas again in this one, 17 of 46 from deep to 9 of 25. I have criticized Boston for that, many times, that they're so jump shot reliant. And you see a glimpse of that in the fourth quarter where they get stuck in it. But again, when you outshoot the other team from deep by 24 points, that's such a massive margin. They shot 21 more threes than you. Like, it frustrates you when they lose like that, but it's also why you can win a game like this when you go stone cold in the fourth quarter. It's because you dominated the first three. But back to the point. Everything came together in this basketball game for the Dallas Mavericks to win, and they still couldn't get it done. Again, at home versus Kristaps Porzingis, they win the rebounding battle 52-43 in the first quarter of this game and throughout. So many more shots around the rim are available if it's Kyrie Irving driving. And I'm not saying that these are wide open layups, but they're contested. Horford and Tillman are doing a good job down there. Tatum's doing a good, whoever's down there is contesting it, but there's not a 7-3 guy. So there's just a lot more space and there's a lot more room to operate there. They scored 21st quarter points in the paint. And again, throughout this game, there's just shots that Dallas wasn't generating earlier in this series that are there. Lively dunks under the basket, little stuff there. That's a huge component of why they had to win this game. There's so many things that open up for you as a basketball team with Porzingis off the floor. Kyrie Irving puts on a freaking basketball clinic. He gives you 35 points on 13 of 28 from the field and 4 of 6 from deep. That's why I put this loss on Luka. I'm so disappointed in him, man. He's one of my favorite players in the league. He got cooked defensively, and this is not the only game. He got cooked completely last game. I think they mentioned this on ESPN. He allowed the most blow-bys of any defender. I don't know what the context, if it was just these playoffs.
In NBA Finals history that they've recorded.
That's ridiculous. I mean, that's sad. Like, I know the knee's banged up, man. I know you're tired from putting the offense on your back. There's not enough excuses that you can give me to be at this level defensively in back-to-back games. And it wasn't just that he got cooked defensively. It wasn't just the fact that his effort throughout this game on the glass and defensively was apathetic. It was the fact that he's letting the noise get to him. Luka, you're at home, man. You got the crowd on your side, and yet you are still here jaw-jacking with refs. You're looking for calls, and you're bitching and moaning the whole game, man. Like, bro, get your ass up off the ground and get back on defense, Luka. It's game 3 of the finals. We don't have time to do this shit. Excuse my French, but like, bro, the moment don't get any bigger, man. You got to win this game. You're down 0-2. It's just, it really felt, I love Luka, man, and that's why I'm so passionate and frustrated about this, is that there's no bigger game, man. This is it. You got to persevere. And it just frustrates me that he's doing these little things, looking for calls, not getting back on defense. And then later in this game, settling for jumpers. And then you compound that with the fact that at the end of this game, Luka, you have to have the awareness that you have 5 fouls and cannot go for that charge call. I know that that's something that you would do maybe earlier in this game in transition, looking to get an easy opportunity. You just can't do that when your team desperately needs you in a tight ball game and you go to try to get a charge with 5 fouls. And the reality, too, I know a lot of people thought that it wasn't. That's a foul. They're going to call that. They made the right call. Like, Luka rightfully got kicked out of this basketball game. Top to bottom, man, again, you're not going to be in this basketball game without Luka Doncic, obviously, right? You need him, and he provided offensively. But it's about the stakes of this game. It's about realizing the gravity of the moment, and it's about going above and beyond. You're a superstar, Luka. I consider you in the running to be maybe the best player on planet Earth, so I'm going to hold you to that standard. And Luka was not at that standard whatsoever in this basketball game. So obviously, they're not going to be in this game without him. But considering the stakes, considering what he gave you, I pin this loss on Luka, man. I'm really disappointed in him, man.
This series from Luka Doncic has been the single worst and most inexcusable defensive effort from a superstar that I can think of in NBA history. Legitimately, you mentioned the stat about game 2 being blown by 13 times, the most that they have recorded in a finals game. This one is every bit as bad, if not worse. So many boneheaded moments where you just literally think, Luka, you might as well not be out there. He allows Jaylen Brown to get an easy cut off of a Horford post up. He allows Drew Holiday to get back-to-back offensive rebounds when that's his assignment. He's completely out of position to contest a Sam Hauser corner three that's wide open. He has a sequence in the second half where on back-to-back possessions, he just does not get a hand up on a Drew Holiday pull-up three. And then the next time down, he allows Jaylen to easily get the angle on the baseline and create a wide open catch and shoot three for Jayson Tatum. There were a couple possessions in game 2 where he quite literally did not guard Derek White out of pick and roll. I don't know why. I don't know if it was strategic, if it was deliberate, but like very clearly, Derek Jones Jr. was not intending to switch off of Jayson Tatum. Luka just left Derek White and he missed 2 wide open shots, but like there have been so many moments on that side of the ball that are just completely unacceptable. And as you said, Logan, there is no excuse, bro. I don't care if your knee is hurt. This is the NBA Finals. It is not that hard to be in position. It's not hard to get a hand up. It is not hard to play with effort at the very least. It doesn't matter what load you're taking on offensively. This is a level of apathy defensively we've never seen from a superstar in the NBA Finals. This is it, bro. This is the moment. This is the pinnacle. And I understand you're at a talent disadvantage. I understand there are all these factors working against you. At the very least, do what you can on that side of the ball. And he hasn't even come close to that. And of course, there have been dudes who have been targeted defensively, right? LeBron used to work for that switch with Steph damn near every possession in their finals matchups. Steph competed, though. Steph competed. I've never seen anything like this. And there's no question Luka's one of the best offensive players ever, right? That is a given. I said that I think he's already at, in my opinion, the number 10 offensive peak that we've seen. But there's so much frustrating, bad, immature stuff from him in this game. Foul baiting, falling down, and whining when you don't get a call, and then not getting back on defense, allowing an advantage for the offense. That stuff is inexcusable. If you want to win an NBA title, Logan, you have to leave it all out there. It's not just about doing your job when the ball is in your hands as a creator out of pick and roll and isolation. It is about every moment doing whatever you can to impact winning. And that is where I am extremely disappointed in Luka Doncic. The ability will never be in question offensively. But the fact that he didn't seem to grasp what was required of him in this moment is just so disappointing because these opportunities are few and far between. And again, Boston just has overwhelming advantages. I understand that. But he has to mature there. He has to understand the stakes of a moment like this. That's not what the best player in the world does, Logan. It's just not. And I understand people talk about the comparison between him and Jokic, and they say, okay, they're both defensively limited players. Who is at the more important defensive position? And people say it's the center. It's Nikola Jokic. So I would rather just not have that guy. I just think it's a false equivalency. I've never seen Nikola Jokic defend in a meaningful basketball situation as poorly as Luka did right now, be targeted as relentlessly and so consistently, lead to fantastic results for the offense. It's extremely disappointing. And by the way, offensively, Luka just wasn't good enough in this game. That wasn't the case through the first couple. He came out red hot in this game, and he's fared well in that matchup with Jayson Tatum throughout this series. He was cooking him early. He was too shifty. The change in pace was too good. He was too physical. Like, it was pretty overwhelming early, but then he started settling a bit more. His three ball was off, and Boston started defending him really well off those switches. Tillman was defending him really, really well. Tatum has a huge defensive possession at the end of this game, and they started to force him into some of those tougher finishes around the paint, just outside the paint, not getting those looks at the rim. So if he gives you 27 points and 6 assists on 11 of 27 shooting, automatically, that's going to be a win for Boston. Just getting that level of offensive production from Luka, because the standard is so high, because the whole game plan is just he has to be overwhelming as a scorer, and he wasn't in this game. But then when you add on to that, how he defended, how abysmal he was there, it's just not close to good enough. So we can talk about the huge discrepancy in roster talent. Obviously, that's a given coming into this. But if you're going to win, Dallas, if you had any prayer, it had to be because Luka and Kyrie were exceptional. And that's not just about offense. That's about being engaged defensively. That's about doing what they had done up to this point, where they were capable defensively. Kyrie was good. Luka was capable. And you weren't able to exploit him consistently. And also, it was easier to hide him in other series than it is against Boston. But regardless, his level has been significantly lower than where it was at. And you just can't have that from your best player. You certainly can't have that from a guy who a bunch of people want to proclaim the best player in the world.
Yeah, that's the thing I love about basketball so much, man, is in any individual possession, you never know what that 1% of extra effort will give you. You don't know what the domino effect, the butterfly effect is going to be. If I contest this shot and I get my hand up, maybe he misses. If I go for this rebound, maybe I poke it out and my teammate comes up with it, man. It's that extra 1%. It's like when you watch the Knicks, I know all 5 of those guys are going to do everything they can in their power to make the life-saving play. And you don't know what it's going to come. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't mean jack. Maybe the Boston Celtics are just too talented. But we're going to find out. We're going to push them to their brink. We are going to do everything in our power to do it. And Carson, you talk about the talent discrepancy. When there's nothing that you can do, you do what you can. And Luka didn't do that tonight. And that's the final area I really want to focus on is his demeanor. Mm-hmm. Luka was so worried about the things that he can't control in this basketball game. I understand getting frustrated with refs' calls and their inconsistencies. And to sympathize with some people in the chat that are flaming me a little bit here, yes, the refs missed some calls on Luka. I empathize and I understand that, but that's going to happen, man.
Yeah.
And the fact that he is so caught up and concerned with the calls.
Refs missed an obvious foul on a Jayson Tatum dunk. He just got cleanly hit on the arm. This stuff happens. You either respond, you stay engaged, or you get deflated and you disappear in the moment.
Exactly. And when you get so caught up with these things that you can't control, you lose yourself in it. And you lose. That's my big takeaway with Luka from this basketball game, man. And I think you saw some of this with Boston in their first trip to the finals against the Warriors, a lack of composure, a lack of experience, a lack of readiness for the moment and realizing the gravity of the situation. And I think this is going to be a real learning scenario for Luka Doncic, and it sucks. But you don't take losses in these scenarios, man. You learn lessons, and I want Luka to take a big lesson from this one. You also talk about the gravity of this. Look, man, we can all pencil people coming back to big games, right? A lot of people penciled in Dan Marino to go back to a Super Bowl after he got there in his second season. Dan Marino never got back to the big game. That's not his fault. He had a bunch of bad defenses. But what I'm getting at here is you don't know, man. You never know with any of these players, right? Chris Paul didn't think that was going to be his last trip to the Western Conference Finals when he went with New Orleans way back in the day, right? I'm going to be right back here. I'm in my prime. You never really know, man. And you just have to capitalize on every single moment, every chance that you get. And Luka just didn't do that. I think he can learn a lot from this game. And the final thing I want to hit on the demeanor point, it really made me mad that I saw Luka walking off the court smiling, man. And that's a little thing, but I don't know, man. I also didn't like that aspect of it too, dude. Luka, like I'm definitely not walking off the court smiling at getting kicked out of a game, man. But that's my big takeaway, man. I don't know if there's a talent discrepancy. I don't know if it would have mattered, but I think there's a lack of composure from Luka that we saw in this game, man. And I think he should take something away from this loss.
Just to be clear on the CP3 point, because unfortunately I'm obsessed with basketball history.
He
didn't make the conference finals.
Oh, you never Houston? Got there? I swear
not
he got
with
there
New Orleans.
One season with New Orleans with David
No,
West.
they got to the second round. They got to the second round
in
2008.
Sure?
I'm 100% positive.
My bad, man. I'm sorry.
No. It's all good, dude. It's all good. Here's what I will say. Luka will figure this stuff out. He's too monumentally talented to not get there. And that is ultimately the overarching point with all Luka Doncic discussion. In his second year, he led one of the best offenses ever without another player even close to star level on his team. He had the best offensive season we've ever seen from a 20-year-old. And that established a standard that he has just maintained and built upon over the years. And so we don't view him as even a normal 25-year-old star or superstar. We don't talk about him like we talk about SGA because he's been at this level, right? The expectation is extremely, extremely high for Luka. But you saw that he was 25 years old in this game and in this series. You saw that he still needs to improve significantly in terms of his defensive effort, at least in a setting like this. And that's going to happen. And you use the Marino comparison. Here's the thing. Basketball is just different. Football, the impact that any one player can have is just not significant enough. In basketball, all of the greatest players ever have their chance. They have their opportunity. And you talk about Chris Paul, even he has had a couple of opportunities. You talk about James Harden, who was the guy who hasn't gotten to the finals as the guy, but he was knocking on the door in conference finals that were essentially the finals, and he ultimately wasn't good enough in those situations. Luka is on a different level from those guys, though. I think Luka is on a trajectory to be probably one of the 15 best players to ever play this game when his career is over. And that honestly might be a conservative estimate because I do still think there's room for him to improve. But again, this is why I don't think he's the best player in the world yet. Well, it's not the entire reason, but that's a very nuanced conversation that we don't have time to get into right now. The other Dallas star, Logan, Kyrie, had his big game. He had his monster offensive performance. He gives you 35 points on 13 of 28 shooting. And from the jump, it's just entirely different. This is the game that we've been waiting for. And this was the game that really was looming because as well as Boston defended him in games 1 and 2, he was 7 of 23 on jumpers. He was 0 of 8 from deep. Like, this is an all-time great shot maker. He was going to get hot at some point, and he came out hot. You immediately saw that aggression that you needed, the intention to weaponize his quickness, burnt Drew Holiday off the bounce on his first bucket of the game, attacking Al Horford, attacking Peyton Pritchard. These dudes who are not like conventional weak points, but again, anywhere he feels he has an advantage, he was being aggressive. He was attacking in transition where Boston really limited him in those first couple games, but he's been awesome this regular season and in these playoffs. And then his three-point shooting was just insane. So like all of his coldness that we saw through the first 2 games, he counteracted just with how hot he came out to start this game. But ultimately, like, that doesn't erase what he did in the first 2 games, not even close to it. And that's where I do think he absolutely has to be held accountable because he sucked in games 1 and 2. He was giving you 14 points per game on, I believe, 37% true shooting. And we talk about how Luka had to be consistently exceptional for Dallas to have any chance. So did Kyrie. And Kyrie was awesome as a scorer in this game, but he's been hunted defensively in this series, and he just really let you down in the first 2 games, especially game 2, because that's the one where you had an opportunity. So this is a great game from him. Ultimately, though, I'm still quite disappointed overall with Kyrie in this series because of how horribly he started.
Yeah, and both your stars leave you shorthanded, shortchanged in 2 swing games that you very well could have won. We talk about last game. Tatum struggles from the field. Boston having just a abhorrent shooting performance by their standards, and Kyrie leaves you hanging in this one. And then in this one, Luka fouls out in crunch time where, dude, the momentum they had, like the run that they were on in the fourth quarter, it really felt like, all right, man, if you let Dallas hang around, these are the games they win, right? When they can out-clutch you. Mm-hmm. And then Luka can't be on the floor. Luka's not playing defense at all. And again, man, in such a tight game, I know that Boston has their, huge third quarter. Again, man, it's those little effort plays from Luka in this game. They're really going to linger in my mind that you don't know how that affects this game, man. If you give that little extra effort on this play, if it makes a difference. You never know when that 1% extra effort is going to make the difference, man. And Luka leaves them hanging. But yeah, man, that's the reality of this Dallas team. And I feel quite foolish, Carson, to be frank, for picking Dallas in this series, just in terms of consistent winning
the
basketball.
Moment that people have been waiting for. The moment the city of Boston has been waiting for.
Consistent winning basketball recipes, man. And we knew it was going to take a Herculean effort every single night from Kyrie and Luka. And you know what, man, it's not even the fact that Dallas isn't going to win this series. It's the fact that, damn, man, they're not even going to win a game. I think that, sure, they can win the next game. Hell, man, it's meaningless at this point, man. It's not if at this point. It's ultimately when. And I think with how their balloon got popped in this one, I really would be surprised if Dallas even got one on their home floor. I have to expect that Boston is probably going to close this thing out in Dallas. But, yeah, man, the fact that they're probably not even going to get a game when it's just they had moments to capitalize, man, and Dallas doesn't. I'm disappointed. I'm really disappointed in Dallas.
They had their moments to capitalize, but as I said, I still think you could run 10,000 simulations of this series and Dallas wouldn't win a single one. Honestly, even if Kyrie and Luka played better, I still don't think it would be enough. It would have absolutely made it a better series. You could have won game 2 if Kyrie was on. Maybe you could have won this one if Luka was better defensively, or better offensively, better overall. But at the end of the day, when we're dishing out blame pie, like a good portion does fall on those 2 stars because their recipe had to be them just going nuclear, them being insane. But there's also the reality that Boston came with a really good defensive game plan and consistently forced them to bear this overwhelming burden, even more so than their roster and personnel limitations would dictate in an average matchup, by doing the inverse OKC, saying, okay, we are not going to make everybody else beat us. We are going to say nobody else can beat us. Nobody else is getting easy shots. You have to make repeatedly these tough mid-range pull-ups, right? You have to win in single coverage. We're not going to overhelp even when you do have an advantage on a drive. And that was extremely effective with their personnel. So, like, it's tough to even say blame on the other guys because you just were at an obvious disadvantage when the rest of your starting 5 is Gafford and PJ Washington and Derek Jones Jr. And the other team has Derek White and Drew Holiday and had Kristaps Porzingis over the first couple games. But still, when we think about where meat was left on the bone for Dallas, there's no question that their horrible three-point shooting, particularly on wide open above the break threes from Derek Jones Jr., from Maxi Kleber, from Josh Green, from PJ Washington, all those guys in the first couple games definitely made life even harder on this Dallas offense. But again, that's just kind of a reality for this team. They played below their expectations, but they were never going to be able to even come close to matching Boston's supporting cast. Dallas did an awesome job of building out this roster, I still think, with the situation they were in. If you told me before the year that the Dallas Mavericks would be in the NBA Finals, I would have said, no way, Jose. I would have said, no way, pal. And here they are. I still think that they've done an awesome job making the most of what was a really challenging situation after they let Brunson walk. They turned to THJ Logan, the one man who could bring some offensive spark, and unfortunately he went 0 from 5 and struggled to defend a bit as well. How do you feel about the Mavs' future at this point? What is their outlook going into next year if we presume them dead?
Yeah, I think their outlook is still good considering the fact that you're going to be able to run it back with Luka and Kyrie, and you've got these complementary pieces. It's a good formula against a lot of teams, right? I think Boston just has a really specific recipe that counteracts what Dallas wants to do. Boston has elite perimeter defenders everywhere. That's why they're winning this, because they can make life difficult in a way for Kyrie and Luka that other teams just can't. Like friend of the show, Michael Donahue, Donnie texted me and he was like, they're having all these conversations, revisiting Minnesota and how they would have been able to disrupt Dallas. And he's like, what do you think about this? I told him point blank, I said, I think Boston just has better personnel, right? You can maybe prefer Minnesota's collective, but specifically in this matchup, Boston just has elite personnel to disrupt these guys. And
the ability to switch everything alone is just so massive. There's no weak point. That's the difference. There's a weak point in Minnesota's defense. Just having to play traditional pick and roll coverages, having Karl Anthony Towns have to guard in space. No weak point for Boston.
1,000%. And so my big question, honestly, with Dallas is probably about Luka and his health. That is where my biggest concern likely lays. In the burden that he has night to night offensively. That's where my biggest concern comes in on if he is built to withstand an entire season of this kind of offensive burden. They talked about it at the top of this broadcast and throughout, and it's not about his production. It's just about I don't know if he's going to be consistently hampered like this. They talked about him giving him that good shot in the leg and, in I think his chest too. I mean, he's battered. He was battered at this point. I'm worried about Luka's conditioning and if his play style is built to be at 100% or close to 100% when it comes time for the finals. But I trust this duo. I trust this defense. I think there are moves this team can make on the margins to get better. I think the biggest thing I'm looking for, though, dude, is a position-wise, a dude who can just shoot and defend at a really high level. And more importantly, I'm putting emphasis on the shoot. Like, if we can run a 4-guy with PJ or Derek Jones Jr., who I think work in this system and are enhanced more by playing with Luka and Kyrie than they would be in any other situation, I'm looking for a guy who is nails from deep and who can competently defend. There's not really that guy on the roster whatsoever. So I think they're probably still one of the 6 best teams in basketball. You know what I mean? I think Dallas, and I talk about earlier, I don't want my words to get misconstrued about what I said about Marino and Chris Paul. I agree with you and what you said. I think Luka is going to get better. I think he's going to grow from this. And I think he's probably going to get back here one day. That's the reality of Luka as a basketball player. He's that damn good. The West is cutthroat. It's going to be super tough. It's not going to be easy, but Luka is that caliber of player. So, no, I think they have championship hopes. But when the standard is now Boston and that's what you're up against, you're going to have to improve, point blank, period.
Yeah, we can have a more in-depth conversation about this once the season is officially over. When we talk about them getting back, though, there's no question to me that Luka will be back at some point, but it might not be all that soon. And it might be with an iteration that looks significantly different than this basketball team, just because, first of all, you have to re-sign Kyrie, which I definitely think that they will do. But my outlook coming into this, we talked with Joel Moran about who is going to be the front runner in the West next year. It was never going to be Dallas to me. This was always like the opportunity for them. And it's tough going up against the Celtics, but there was a very different feeling because with Boston, you know, all those pieces are in place for next year. They'll be the most talented team in the league next year. Even if they somehow didn't win it this year, they would be back and in the exact same position. Not at all the case for Dallas. Very much felt like they played awesome basketball, absolutely, when it mattered most, but they were able to capitalize on avoiding Denver, which I think would have been an exceedingly difficult matchup for them. I think Denver comes back. I think Denver is clearly better in the West than Dallas next year. And I think that OKC is in a position to improve more significantly than anybody else. Like, we're talking about a team that already was pretty darn close with Dallas and is one of the most talented teams in basketball. They could add Lauri Markkanen at the drop of a hat. They could add Denny Avdija. Like, all those things are in the cards for them. They could solve their biggest issue in a pretty perfect way with some sort of like stud four, because that's the reality. Again, Dallas built this team off the scrap heap and they did a really good job, but you're still dealing with the island of misfit toys. Like, you've made the most and it's awesome. And I love all these role players. I root for all of them because they have such cool stories, all of them undervalued in their own ways. But it's just a bit unfair when you're talking about, oh, well, our third, fourth, and fifth best guys are Aaron Gordon, MPJ, and KCP. Or we have SGA and J-Dub and Chet, and now we have Lauri Markkanen, which would be best case scenario for OKC. That's where I think it's painful for Dallas. Not that you didn't win this series, because that was always going to be a super long path. But again, to still have any missed opportunities and just understanding where they fit into that big picture out West. I have seen some people talking, Logan, about where this ranks among the more lopsided finals in recent history. What do you think? When was the last time we saw a finals this lopsided?
Man, I think we'd have to look back. The first one that I think of is like Nets Spurs from the early 2000s, where it's just like, you know, New Jersey really has very
Nets
little.
Lakers would be the better one, because Nets Spurs actually went 6, because you have to think about the fact that there was nobody good on that basketball team other than Tim Duncan, and it's like one of the top 5 carry jobs ever.
Just either of those Nets teams, just in terms of like real offensive creation, like good scoring. And I know that's a different era of basketball too. Just in terms of talent discrepancy, maybe I'm looking too far back. Like, if we're
I think you're
looking
looking a little too far back.
I would say, I also think any of those Warriors teams like KD and I mean, you know, we just kind of knew, like, that's a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
I think that was a different level of kind of obvious from this Boston team. But again, when you were looking at the most talented rosters since Boston, that's the first team that you'd look to. So in recent memory, I'd probably say anybody that got matched up, the Cavs Warriors kind of series is probably the first one.
Yeah, 2018 Cavs Warriors was absolutely more lopsided than this series. LeBron quite literally did everything humanly possible to win them game 1, and then JR said, I'm just chilling. JR had no idea what was going on. So that one is definitely more lopsided. I think there's a very real case, though, that like last year's final was every bit as lopsided, if not more, than this year's. Like, I do think that the talent gap on paper was at least as significant. And it's not like there were a bunch of blowouts in that series. But again, like, we're talking about this, games 2 and 3 have both been very competitive. you've just had that feeling. You've had that gut and just known like, okay, one team is a lot better here. Game 1 is the only blowout, but last year was quite similar. Like it felt like Miami had to really pull out all the stops and kind of have a crazy shooting performance in game 2 to just sneak out of there. Whereas like Denver, as we talked about last year, they won 2 finals games with 5 3-pointers made. Nobody else did that throughout the entire playoffs. That was just a way better basketball team that had a way more reliable formula. So honestly, I'm not even sure that this year is more than last year. I've seen some people going as far back as '07 Spurs Cavs. I think that's on a different level. Just having Kyrie alone alongside Luka, having 2 stars of that caliber is something that a lot of these other teams that we're talking about didn't have, even if Kyrie hasn't played up to his expectations. All right, guys. Well, first of all, Logan, any final thoughts on the finals before we take a quick break and then give a little memorial to Jerry West?
Yeah, the only last thing I want to say about Dallas too is I don't want this to be misconstrued as like Dallas not being a great basketball team. I think Dallas is a great basketball team, but I just think Boston's greater, right? What Dallas did in the second half of this season was amazing. I mean, they were the best defense after the All-Star break, after they'd made all those trades. Like, this in no way like invalidates their path or invalidates anything
No,
that
of
they've
course
done up
not.
to this way. This is still a great basketball team, but you're going up against one of the most talented ever. I just don't want this to be looked at as like, oh man, Dallas is a fraudulent or anything like that. I know people like to get hyperbolic on social media,
Yeah.
and that's the one narrative that I don't want to start going up. This Dallas team is great.
This Dallas team is very good. They're very good. And they're absolutely a deserved finalist. And the path is legit, dude. They beat OKC. That's a tough second round draw. They beat Minnesota. I did not pick them to win that series. I thought Minnesota was defending at an obscene level, and they beat them in 5. So there's no question it's a deserved run. I do think in a vacuum, like, who do you think was the best team in the West this year? For me, it's Denver. Do you disagree with that? Yeah. Again, it's just a more talented basketball team. So it does come down to matchups, but like, Dallas did a phenomenal job with all those matchups in the Western Conference. You cannot take away from this. And even if it was Denver against Boston, Boston would be the more talented team. You'd be betting on Denver defending at a high enough level, Denver having a much more complete offensive formula. I just think Denver's a better basketball team. But Dallas absolutely deserved to be here. They earned it. And Boston's just really great. It's a tough matchup. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Then we will talk about Jerry West, who very sadly passed away today, after some quick words from DraftKings. We are this close to crowning an NBA champ, and with the action heating up on the court, it's even hotter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. And DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered every step of the way with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Don't miss out as the NBA postseason winds down.
It's super easy to get started with DraftKings if you're a first timer. Try betting on something like a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your bet. It's that simple. And if you're new to DraftKings, you gotta check this out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. So, Logan, this is very unfortunate because this is the second time in just a couple of weeks that we have to talk about an NBA legend who has passed away. Of course, we just had to do this with Bill Walton. Jerry West, 86 years old, lived a very long life, but nevertheless, just one of the monumental figures in NBA history. And again, this is a sport that is new enough to where many of the legends, even from the origins of the NBA, really have still been with us, or at least what we think about as like the first great era, that being the 1960s. And Jerry West is absolutely one of those guys. I made a TikTok about this, but I do just want to take a moment to emphasize what an outstanding basketball player Jerry West was. He holds some really outstanding company in NBA history. He's the #1 final scorer of all time, which is pretty remarkable when you consider that LeBron James has been to 10 finals and averaged 28.5 points a game there. And there's a dude who has more finals points than him, but deservedly had the nickname Mr. Clutch. Pretty cool that you can acknowledge a man's clutchness when he ultimately had some of the most devastating close losses in league and finals history. 3 times was within a possession of a title, but he always did everything within his power in all those situations. One of the most complete superstars in league history, elite scorer, elite playmaker, elite defender, awesome positional rebounder, was all defense every year that the word was in existence when he was healthy, and is the only player ever to lead the playoffs in both scoring and assists at least 3 times. Also, one of the most efficient guards that we've ever seen. He led the league in true shooting twice, Logan. The only other guard to ever do that as a high volume scorer is Steph Curry. And you have to think about the fact that that is largely empowered by the 3-point line, which of course is going to favor the little guys who can shoot from farther out. Jerry West didn't have that. Guards were way less efficient than bigs at the time. And he and Oscar were the 2 guys who were so great, so consistently downhill, such great shot makers too, 8 up free throws that they were able to overpower that and really define the sort of archetype for great guards that we think about today. We had never seen before them in the brief history of the league a guard who was both dominant as a scorer and a playmaker. Bob Cousy was the best guard in the league, and he was a good scorer, but he wasn't a great one, and he was very inefficient there. Those 2 were able to shoulder the sort of load for an offense that we think of with modern great guards, and Jerry was defending at some of the highest levels that we've ever seen from the position. So an incredible basketball life. I think people know about what he did as an executive, running the Showtime Lakers, building the Kobe Shaq Lakers, even involved with these Steph Curry Warriors, like just had his hand in so much greatness throughout league history. But at times I feel like that can almost overshadow what he did as a player because it's more recent and we're more familiar with it. But we cannot lose sight of the complete history of this league, because Jerry West is one of the 15 best players to ever play this sport. And he is one of its founding fathers in so many ways. And he's just instrumental to almost the entire history of the sport. It is exceedingly difficult to find an era that hasn't been significantly impacted by Jerry West in one way or another. And so it's a tremendous loss for the basketball community because of that. And just want to make sure that we continue to acknowledge all these great players and appreciate the fact that we would not be where we are as a basketball world without these guys
whatsoever. Some of his other like legacy things are remarkable. He's an all-star every single year of his career. He's going to get inducted, Carson, into the Basketball Hall of Fame for a 3rd time. Once as a player, once as I think Olympic team member, and then now as a contributor. And he's the first Finals MVP ever. Yeah, I don't want to misquote that. He's the first ever.
First ever, and of course, the only to this day to win the award on the losing team.
Yeah, we were talking about that not that long ago. You can't tell the story of this league without Jerry West, man. And obviously he's the freaking logo. It's a huge loss, dude. West is one of the greatest players in the history of this game. It was sad, dude. I woke up sad today reading that. Like, that was the first thing I read when I woke up. He's an all-timer, man. It's sad, dude. I'm just to lose like Walton and West in like succession like this. It's these guys love the game so much, and everybody they talk to just talk about like how vibrant they were, how much they love the game, how much they love just sharing their passion for the game. And it's sad, man. But he's an all-timer in every facet, man, as a player, as an exec, as a contributor, just as a life in basketball, man. Jerry's a GOAT, and you can't tell the history of this league without him, man. And who knows? I mean, without guys like that, dude, who knows where the league would be at right now, man. He's an all-timer. This is a sad day, man.
Dude, my grandpa, shout out to Pops, said that he drove to see Jerry West play at West Virginia. My grandpa lived in Tennessee. I think he maybe went to see Oscar too, but like, that's just kind of crazy to think about. Those are the dudes 65 years ago who, my grandpa was going to see in college. Pretty incredible. Everybody go watch some Jerry West. That man was tough. He was tough and he did everything, and absolutely will be missed in the basketball world. So on that note, appreciate you guys as always. Hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, there is plenty more Nerd Sesh content. If you want to see all of our full shows, you can on our YouTube channel. You can also see our video essays that we do there. You can listen to the show across audio platforms, and you can follow us across social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh, to see clips from the show, to see our trivia content. That is all there. You can also check out our merch at thevolume.com, and you can chat with the fellows by joining our Discord. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bios. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.